There's something deeply strange about pain. When it arrives, and it always arrives, our first instinct is to run. We pray for it to end. We do anything to numb it, to shove it outside our awareness, as if its very existence is a violation of the natural order. But what if I told you pain isn't the enemy? What if pain is actually the door, the only door, into the most important room of your life? The room where you discover who you truly are. I spent years in places where pain wasn't optional. Places where suffering was the air we breathed, the water we drank, the ground beneath our feet. And there, surrounded by death, by hunger, by absolute despair, I discovered something that changed everything. The pain only hurts while you fight it. The moment you stop resisting, the moment you look at it and say, okay, teach me, that exact moment, the pain transforms. It stops being a monster. It becomes a teacher. Now, I know what you're thinking. How can suffering teach anything? How can something that destroys lead to growth? Hold that question. Because by the end of this, you'll understand not just how, but why you've never been taught this before. Think about when you were a child. The first time you touched something too hot, the pain screamed at you, move your hand. It taught you about limits. About cause and effect. About how the world has sharp edges and you need to learn to navigate them. But nobody taught you that this same logic applies to emotional pain. To existential anguish. To that deep suffering you feel when life shatters you into pieces. We treat psychological pain like it's a mistake. Like it shouldn't exist. Like it's an error in the system. And that's exactly why it persists. Because the pain you reject is the pain that multiplies. The pain you hide is the pain that rots inside you. But the pain you acknowledge, the pain you look in the eyes and ask, what did you come to teach me? That pain transforms into wisdom. Let me tell you what I saw in the camps. There were men who had everything, family, wealth, status ripped away in an instant. And some collapsed completely. They became empty shells, waiting for death. Their eyes went hollow. Their spirits broke before their bodies did. But others? Others seemed to grow. Not physically, we were all starving, all dying by degrees. But internally, something expanded. Something deepened. You could see it in how they carried themselves, even in that hell. How is that possible? How does anyone grow in total collapse? The answer is simple but not easy. They stopped asking, why is this happening to me? And started asking, what can I do with this? You see the difference? The first question is a victim searching for blame. Searching for an explanation that will never be satisfying. Searching for justice in a universe that doesn't operate on our sense of fairness. The second is a human being searching for meaning. And meaning is the most powerful force in existence. Stronger than pleasure. Stronger than happiness. Because pleasure fades. Happiness is temporary. But meaning? Meaning survives the storm and emerges intact. When pain stops hurting, it's because you found meaning inside it. Not some cosmic explanation for why bad things happen. Not some religious platitude about God's plan. But a personal, intimate meaning that you built with your own hands from the wreckage. It's like a broken bone. When it heals, it doesn't go back to what it was before. It becomes stronger at the fracture point. Nature adds extra material there, as if saying, you broke here once, I'll make sure you don't break here again. Pain marks the place where you became stronger. But only if you let it do its work. If you resist the healing process, if you fight the pain instead of learning from it, if you try to force the bone back to its original shape, it won't heal properly. It stays weak. Stays vulnerable. Stays broken in ways that don't show but hurt all the same. Your soul works the same way. When you lose someone you love, when your dreams shatter, when life betrays you in unimaginable ways, you want everything to go back to normal. You want to be who you were before. You want to wake up and discover it was all a nightmare. But you can't. And this is the truth we resist with everything we have. That person you were before? They died the moment the pain arrived. Now you have a choice. You can spend your life mourning who you were. living in the past. Building a shrine to your former self and never moving beyond it. Or you can discover who you've become. Which will you choose? You've noticed something, haven't you? People who've suffered most often have the kindest eyes, the deepest wisdom, the most genuine compassion. I'm not romanticizing suffering. Suffering itself has no value. It's not noble. It's not beautiful. It's terrible and destructive and something we should avoid when we can. But what we do with it, that has all the value in the world. In the camps, I saw it daily. Men who shared their last piece of bread. Men who offered comfort when they themselves were collapsing. Men who chose how they would die, since they couldn't choose if they would die. And that choice, that tiny, precious choice, was everything. It was the difference between being an object in the hands of fate and being a human being exercising their last freedom, the freedom to choose your attitude. Pain teaches us this. It teaches us that no matter what happens to us, there's always a space, a microscopic space between the stimulus and our response. Between what life does to us and how we react to it. And in that space lives our freedom. In that space lives our humanity. In that space lies the difference between being crushed by circumstances and being refined by them. Remember that question from earlier? About why no one teaches this? Here's why. Because it requires you to stop lying to yourself. To stop pretending everything's fine when it's not. To stop wearing masks that hide your wounds. To stop smiling when you want to scream. The pain you don't acknowledge is like untreated poison. It circulates through your system, infecting everything. It seeps into your relationships. It colors your perception of reality. It turns into bitterness, resentment, fear. But here's what you can do. When pain arrives, when it really arrives, not the minor discomforts but the soul-shattering pain, ask yourself 3 things. First, what is this pain trying to protect? Because all pain, all fear, all anxiety is ultimately trying to protect something you value. If you didn't care, it wouldn't hurt. The depth of your pain reveals the depth of your love. Second, what would I have to accept to let this transform me? Usually it's a truth you've been avoiding. That someone isn't coming back. That a dream is dead. That you were wrong about something fundamental. That you're not who you thought you were. Third, who am I becoming through this? Not who you were. Not who you wish you could be. But who you're actually becoming, right now, through this fire. These aren't comfortable questions. They're not supposed to be. Transformation never is. But when you ask them honestly, when you sit with the discomfort instead of running, the pain begins to shift. It stops being dead weight and becomes living weight. Like carrying a child. Still heavy. But now it has purpose. Now it has meaning. Now it's something you carry not because you have to, but because it's transforming you into someone deeper, stronger, more real. In the camps, I witnessed men carry unimaginable suffering with dignity that made me weep. And I realized something profound. It's not the absence of pain that makes someone noble. It's not freedom from suffering that creates greatness. It's the presence of meaning in the midst of suffering. It's the capacity to look into the abyss and say, "You don't define me." To stand in the fire and say, "You don't consume me." To face the darkness and say, "You don't own me." Because what happens to you is only half the story. It's the half you can't control, the half that comes from outside, from chance and circumstance and the chaos of existence. But the other half, the half that matters, the only half you truly control, is what you do with what happens. How you respond. How you interpret. How you let it shape you. The pain stops hurting when you stop fighting who you really are. When you accept your limitations. When you recognize your wounds not as flaws but as part of your story. When you admit you don't have all the answers, that you're not invincible, that you're as human and fragile as everyone else. There's tremendous power in that admission. Because when you stop trying to be superhuman, you can finally be human. And being human fully, honestly, completely human is enough. It's more than enough. It's everything. I saw men in the camps who'd been great before. Doctors, lawyers, professors. Men accustomed to respect, admiration, authority. Men who'd built their identities on their accomplishments, their status, their role in society. And there, in the camps, they were nothing. Numbers. Stripped of everything that had defined them. Less than nothing in the eyes of their captors. Some of them couldn't bear it. Their identity was so tied to their external status that when it vanished, they had nothing left to hold on to. They couldn't find anything inside themselves that felt real or valuable. They disintegrated from the inside out. But others discovered something extraordinary. They discovered that when you remove all the titles, all the achievements, all the external validation, all the things you thought defined you, something still remains. A core. An irreducible self. A consciousness that exists independent of circumstances. A being that simply is, without needing anything external to justify its existence. And that self doesn't need anything external to exist. It doesn't need approval. It doesn't need success. It doesn't need comfort or pleasure or recognition. It simply is. That's the final freedom. The freedom no one can take from you, no matter what they do to your body, your circumstances, your life. The freedom to be yourself, completely, without apologies, without masks, without fear. And pain? Pain is the fire that burns away everything that isn't you. It destroys the false identities you've constructed. It exposes the lies you've told yourself about who you are and what matters. It forces you to face what you've been avoiding your entire life. But when it finishes its work, when you stop resisting and allow it to teach, you emerge not as who you were, but as who you were always meant to be. Not perfect. Not without scars. Not free from further pain. But real. Authentic. Whole in a way you've never been before. So let me ask you this: what pain in your life right now is trying to teach you something? What suffering are you resisting that might actually be the doorway to who you're becoming? What would happen if you stopped running? If you stopped numbing? If you stopped pretending? If you turned around, looked your pain in the eyes, and asked it, "What did you come to teach me?" I can't promise it will be easy. It won't be. I can't promise the pain will disappear. It won't, not immediately, perhaps not ever completely. But I can promise you this: when you find meaning in your suffering, when you allow it to transform you rather than destroy you, when you use it as fuel for becoming rather than as an excuse for remaining, something shifts. The pain doesn't go away. But it changes. It stops being your enemy and becomes your teacher. It stops being a weight that crushes you and becomes a foundation that supports you. It stops being the thing that breaks you and becomes the thing that makes you. And one day, maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but one day you'll look back on this pain and realize it was the best teacher you ever had. Not because it felt good. Not because you wanted it. Not because it was fair or just or right. But because it showed you who you really are. Because it burned away everything false and left only what's true. Because it forced you to grow in ways you never would have chosen but desperately needed. The pain stops hurting not when it disappears, but when it starts teaching. And the greatest lesson it teaches is this: you are so much more than anything that has ever happened to you. You are not your circumstances. You are not your trauma. You are not your losses or your failures or your wounds. You are the consciousness that experiences these things. The awareness that holds them. The being that can choose how to respond to them. And that being, that essential you, is unbreakable. Because it's not a thing that can be broken. It's not an object that can be destroyed. It's not a structure that can collapse. It's the space in which all experiences happen. The light by which all things are seen. The freedom that remains when everything else has been taken away. That's who you are. That's what the pain reveals when you let it teach you. And once you see that, once you really see it, you're free. Not free from pain. Not free from suffering. Not free from the challenges of being human. But free to choose how you meet them. Free to decide what they mean. Free to become who you're meant to be, regardless of what happens to you. That's the teaching. That's the gift hidden inside the pain.